Hey, welcome to this video where I'm going to kind of show you how I would set up a wing console from scratch. I'm going to base this around the wing compact. I'm going to assume we have a DL32 or S32 connected off of AS50A. And in addition to that, we'll have a DN48160 plugged into the Ultranet port of that DL32 or S32 to extend our output socket count up a little bit. I'll show you how we do that a little bit later. I'm also going to assume we have DP48s connected off of AS50B. Before we get into the bulk of it, I just want to show you two things that you're probably going to ask about, and you're going to wonder why that I'm kind of maybe doing something in a slightly different way than what you're intended to do. The first thing is linking channel customization to the source. Let's say, for example, I just wanted to start building my channel strips right from the get-go. So we have maybe a kick drum, a snare drum, we do some overheads, we start with that, and we notice by default the wing puts a bunch of the local sockets on your first few groups of faders. And so your A2 or packaging engineer would probably be kind of confused why you have the kick drum showing up on local 1, the snare showing up on local 2, when we're going to be using AS50A for the bulk of our I/O. So by default, I'm going to disable link customization to the source, and then once I get my channel strips together, then I will then copy that to my source sockets from there, and I'll show you how we do that. The second thing I'm going to show you, and this is going to be really counterintuitive to what a lot of you might be expecting, is I am not going to be linking any stereo sockets, at least on the socket routing side of things, and I'll show you why. Again, let's say I start building some fader space here. I start building out my channel strips, and let's just say I start with a guitar, and then we have, I don't know, a keyboard, and then another keyboard or something like that. And I want this guitar to be a stereo guitar. So I want to make this stereo, and well, now this keyboard is seeing the same stereo pair that this guitar is seeing. So now we need to actually take this off of that, and this gets a little confusing. Let's make that stereo. This now needs to go to socket 3. This now needs to go to socket 4, and then on and on and on. And so actually I think I did it wrong still. There we go, that's what I needed. All right, so we could do this. Let's say this show goes on, we have this show go, great. Now we have another show coming up, and we now need to build new channel strips. So let's say now we're gonna have a kick drum here, and then we're gonna have, say the snare drum, and then say some cymbals and that kind of thing. Well, the kick drum doesn't need a stereo socket, so we're gonna make that mono, and well, we just lost socket 2. Now everything is now one off, and now we have to go back and manually tell everything to go back one socket. So you can see that it gets kind of confusing. If you do it right, it's nothing to worry about, but especially if you're doing things on the channel strips side of first, and then assigning sockets later, it's going to make your life easier to kind of maybe do things a little bit differently. I basically want a 1-to-1 fader to socket ratio, and then I can reduce from there rather than squeezing everything in and having to add in later. And so again, I'll show you kind of how I manage that towards the end of the video. Let's start with a fresh console state and start from the top. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say we need 12 buses for monitoring. So I'm going to need to kind of make a few of these buses a bit different. So by default, 2 of them are set for group. We're going to change those to tap points, just like you would for any other dead or monitor bus. You want it to follow the tap points of the channels. And again, we'll make these 2 taps as well. We're also going to need to disable these from the main left and right. We don't want someone's monitor mix to go through the main mix, main house mix. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and change the bus colors just so they're all uniform, at least the buses that we're using for monitoring. So I'm just going to kind of go with this cyan blue. Cyan is kind of like this utility kind of color in my mind, at least on the wings, so I'm going to make everything this kind of cyan blue. I'm also going to rename my main buses from here on out. We're going to be using 4 mains buses, so 1 for mains, 1 for subs, 1 for front fills, and another for broadcast. We're not going to be using any matrices because the 4 mains buses are basically 4 matrices but for free. So that's going to be our 4 main buses. Last kind of utility thing we need to do before we start, kind of laying some faders out, laying out some channels, is how channels send into buses by default and how the pan links are for these channels, you can't change them all in one go. You have to do it individually per channel, unless you maybe make one channel that has all the on-offs in the correct way that you need, all the pan links in the way that you need, and then we're just going to copy this to the rest of the channels. And so I also need to change the mains, and not every channel needs to go in the subwoofer at first, so I'm going to leave that off for now. I'm also going to change the tap point to just after this first insert. So like for something like a de-esser or something like that, if the channel was going to the buses, it would be getting that de-esser on the bus monitors, the monitors, in-ears, that kind of thing. So I think that's everything we need. We have that tap point change, we have the mains correct, and also we also need to add these into the effects buses as well. Those do need to follow the pan link. I think we're good to go. So I'm going to go to the copy icon, select all parameters, and then select all other channels, and then copy. And so that should copy all the on-offs, all the tap points, all the fader follow or pan follows, all the on-offs, the way we need them to be for all the channels. Now that that's done, we can actually go and start making our channel strips, our fader layout. So again, I'm going to disable customization link for everybody, and then now we can go and start building our channel strips here. So I'm going to start with drums. I'm not going to do like kick in, kick out, snare in, snare top, or snare top, snare bottom, because I want to try to fit as many types of instruments, as many types of sources as possible. So we're going to go a little bit conservative with something like the drums, and also put maybe aux percussion here though, and the clip track as well. Then from there we can start building out maybe our band, like our bass guitar, stereo guitar. So we're going to do 2 stereo guitars. So there's one stereo guitar, and then here's another stereo guitar, and again I'll show you how to link these in kind of a more clever way later on. Then we have maybe 2 stereo keyboards. So here's one stereo keyboard, and then there is 2 stereo keyboards. After that, maybe we have some like track elements. So say like a stereo synthesizer track or something like that, and then maybe we have a bass guitar track or like a bass synth kind of track, and then we have maybe an aux percussion track. I prefer to have tracks just on one stereo feed, but a lot of people split out the tracks, so I'll do a split here as well. From here, maybe we have some horns, so we'll do say 4 horns. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then 4. From here, let's maybe do our vocal mics. Let's say we have 4 vocal mics. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Then we have 2 inputs to spare. Let's just say we have like some talkback mics or MD mics on stage. So that's those. And then now we have some local inputs to play with. If we say we just stuck to the DL32 or S32 strict 32 front panel XLR inputs, let's say we're now going to go to our local inputs. So let's say we have some ambience mics at front of house. Maybe we have like a talkback mic as well at front of house, hard-coded talkback mic. Don't have to worry about the internal talkback mic system. And then maybe we have some MD mics. And then maybe we have maybe some oscillators that we just, again, hard code, have access to at any given moment for sound check. And then we have 1 spare channel. For aux inputs, maybe we have like USB stick to play some pre-service music or something. And then we have, say, a computer for just like a line in for videos and that kind of thing. So that's our channel strips kind of laid out. And again, since the wing compact is so heavily layered, we are going to be using DCAs for DCA spillover. So I'm going to go ahead and color things in the way that I'm going to assign them into the DCA layer. So drums, I typically color cyan. We'll lump percussion in there as well. Any utility sources like click track, we will just leave kind of that mild blue color. Band, we're going to make green. There's our bass, there's our guitars. There is our keyboards. And then for tracks, I'm just going to make those kind of like a deep purple. We have our horns. Horns are typically made of brass. Brass is like yellow gold. You might notice these channels look a bit dim. That's just because there's no socket currently assigned to them. We'll get to that in just a moment. Vocal mics, we'll make those red. Red's just really catching to the eye. Vocal mics are probably the thing you need to have your eye on the most. Again, some utility stuff here. We'll just keep that kind of pale blue color. Utility stuff. Our MD mics, we'll just make this kind of weird orange. Our oscillators will make it red as well, just in case. Be sure we don't fat finger those, and we'll leave that spare socket there. For aux inputs, I'm going to make those green, just kind of back to the X32 and 32 days where they were by default green. And then we have a bunch of spare aux sockets that we're not going to be using. Let's go ahead and outfit our DCAs now. So again, we already assigned these colors and assigned what they were going to be first off. So there's our drum DCA. Let's do our, say our, band DCA. We'll just kind of make a generic fader thing and make it green. And then we have, I think, our tracks DCA. So I'll find like a computer looking thing and make the purple. Then we had our horn line. Okay, we'll make that kind of yellow gold. We had our vocal line, make that red. And then I think we had our MC mics, make that orange. And then I think lastly we had our aux inputs. I'll just make those green with a little tape deck looking thing. And I'm also going to make a DCA just for effects. So now all it is just basically painting by colors. Just follow the colors straight across. That's our drums done. Here's our band DCA done. Tracks DCA done. And again, having these DCA is going to come really in handy with something like the Wing Compact, just so we're not having to navigate to the layers that these channels are on exactly. We can just press the DCA and it will spill over the layers, spill over the channels for us. And so last bit of it here is just these 4 effects buses. Now that that's done, we can actually get into some routing now. And so most everything's going to be fed by AS50A. I'm going to go to copy channel to source, and now my A2 or patching engineer or whoever can see exactly where I'm expecting these channels to be plugged in at. So I'm going to make it really easy too, just going to basically go straight across for all these 32 inputs, just straight across, and bam, that's done at AS50A. Assuming we're just having the one DL32 or S32 connected. We still have some local sockets we can assign, so we'll have, say, our ambience mics here, those MC mics there, navigate to our oscillators, and then we will assign this spare socket local as well. The USB stick, and we'll just assign that as well, and it's fine that that's stereo because those really aren't going to change at all during any turnovers, anything like that, and then we will make this guy stereo socket as well. We navigate to our output routing now. The only local outs that we're going to need is just our broadcast outs. So we're going to navigate to our main source group and then put broadcast 4L, broadcast 4R on it. Now AS50A is going to be a little more complex. 1 through 16, AS50A 1 through 16, that is going to be our front panel 16 XLR outputs of the DL32S32. The alternate port of a DL32S32 is fed by AS50A 33 through 48. So even though it says alternate, it doesn't have to be alternate assignments. We can put anything on those AS50A channels. So we're going to go to our buses and then just assign these straight across. And that is our 16 front panel XLRs with the DL32S32 taken up. And then the DN48160 will plug in that alternate port, and that's going to see these channels. That's all of our buses, and now we're going to navigate to our mains. Put our front fills here, make a little bit of space, subwoofers, and then our main left and right. For AS50B, which is where we're going to be plugging in our DP48s, we could just copy our AS50A assignments straight across. However, that wouldn't give any processing to the DP48s, and the internal processing of the DP48 is pretty clunky. You don't want your talent to have to deal with that. So instead, what I'm going to suggest is for us to use the user in assignments. So this is a little bit tedious, but this is going to be worth it. So user in 1, we're going to make the kick drum. User in 2, we're going to make the snare drum. Now you notice we only have 24 channels that we can actually use off a tap point of our main channel. So we're going to have to be a little bit careful with what we put into these mixes. So we're going to skip the toms and go straight for the overheads. Go for the aux percussion and of course the click track. Then the bass guitar. Now for these stereo sources, we're all going to take the left channel from them. So guitar 1 left, guitar 2 left, piano 1 left, piano 2 left. And again, left side of that track channel, and then our bass track and aux percussion track individually. We should be able to go straight across with our horns. And then also straight across for our vocals. And then lastly, our 2 channels of like MD, stage side talkback mics. Now we do have some other patches we can do here. These are just going to be basically copies of sockets. So we can put our ambience mics here and also our talkback mic as well. And so now we can navigate back to AES50B, go to our user signal source group, and just assign things one-to-one across the board. Now that that's done, let's do some basic crossover work for our mains. So we're going to start with our mains left and right. I'm going to make this a pretty aggressive curve right from the get-go, and we're going to put it at, say, maybe 80 hertz. We'll go to our subs and do the exact same thing, just on the opposite side. I'm going to bring this guy back to about 80 hertz. For front fills, most people at the front of the stage are going to be getting plenty of bass and lower mid-range just from the stage, so we're not going to really need any of that in our front fills. And then for broadcast, I'm just going to make some kind of educated guesses. Just maybe a bass boost, an upper bass or lower mid-range dip, and then also just a sparkle boost. Just stuff that, kind of typically makes sense for consumer systems. While I'm here, I'm also going to set the following for the main mixes. I'm going to have all the mixes follow main fader except for broadcast mix. That way, if I turn down the mains fader, both my subs and my front fills drop, but I don't necessarily need broadcast to drop in volume as well. Now that that's done, we can revisit our channel on-offs, particularly for the subwoofer. So we're going to go to, say, our kick drum. Kick drum needs to go in the subwoofer, and then our toms can go in the subwoofer. Don't put cymbals in the subwoofer. Bass, of course, needs to go. Guitars and keyboards don't necessarily need to go. We'll put the synthesizer in the subwoofer just to make sure if there's any sub-synth in that. Also, the bass track also should go in the subwoofer. Putting the horns or the vocal lines in the subwoofer sounds like a good recipe for feedback, so we're not going to do that. We're going to put the oscillators in the subwoofer so we can test our subwoofers well. For our USB stick, we probably want it in our subwoofer and fills, but not in broadcast. Otherwise, we might get copyright striked. But we'll need our video computer in pretty much everything. For the ambience mics, they don't need to go in, of course, any of the house stuff at all, but they do need to go in broadcast. And so rather than having to turn these faders up to get them into broadcast, what we can do instead is just set them to send pre-fader into broadcast. That way they stick at this level into broadcast no matter where this fader is. All right, we're about finishing up the final state of the console. Let's get our effects going. The premium side is where you're going to want to put the stuff in for like your plus mix effects. Let's say we have a hall reverb, like a bright plate reverb or something, and then maybe like a tape echo and a chorus. For the standard effect, I'm going to take these up entirely for the vocals. So we're going to have a dynamic EQ for every vocal. That way we can do de-essing and any sort of upper, mid-range, lower treble contouring as well. And then I'm going to put pitchfix on all of them as well. Before some of you ask, vocalists still need to sing on pitch. This just allows them to relax a little bit and makes your life mixing a little bit easier. So let's get these inserts assigned on everybody. So we're going to go to this vocal. And again, because we have that tap point after the dynamic EQ, that means wherever this mic's going, like for all these monitors, it's getting that dynamic EQ contouring as well. So we're going to add this dynamic EQ on all of them. And we'll go back through and add on the second insert our pitch fix. Last, let's navigate to our buses, our bus channel strips, and add the insert for those as well. So there's our first reverb, there's our second reverb, our tape echo, and our chorus. All right, we're about through with the entire console state. The only thing is our compact space, like its actual surface space, looks kind of weird because we were just laying out our channel strips, our input list kind of just in a sequential order. We weren't really worrying about how they would show up on the console. And so some things kind of look weird, like this MC mic is just spilling over, MC section is spilling over, the horn line section is spilling over. So we're just going to kind of clean that up a bit. I'm going to change this to compact, go to that first layer. And again, these instruments are kind of spilling over. They don't necessarily need to be here. So I'm going to create a little bit of space. I'm also going to put a few other auxiliary kind of utility inputs here as well. So our MD and talkback mics can go here. Next layer, again, we're just going to remove these all entirely and kind of start from scratch. We're going to do our bass guitar here, and then we can select all of these. And I want to place these right here with a little bit of space. That way these two sets of guitars can, kind of be on their own individual banks. They're not going to be separated by a bank. And then we're going to add two more utility sources here. So let's say our ambience mics. Just go ahead and get those out of the way. Use some of our space upstream as much as possible. Again, we're going to wipe this layer again and start from scratch. And so this should fit very snugly our 4 channels of tracks, our 4 channels of horns, and our 4 channels of vocal mics. So we have one more layer for faders, 4 channels, main channels. Let's say we need our booth talkback mic, our 2 MC mics here. Say we also have our 2 oscillators. We don't need any of these aux inputs here. We'll put also our 2 other aux inputs for our USB stick and our computer, and then we have 4 slots here we can actually use for our bus effects masters. Next up, we'll navigate to our buses layer, and since we have these effects buses already in another layer, we'll just remove them. We don't need the redundancy. We'll navigate to our main matrix layer, and this is probably going to be spending most of our time during the actual show. I'm just going to reverse order our main mixes. And then we're going to go to our DCA layer and then just copy these all straight across. And then we go to the normal DCA layer, and we don't need any of these because we already have them. Another spot, don't need the redundancy, don't need to worry about it. So we are going to just pull these off, and we are good to go. So now we can take a look at our compact space. We have drum set, aux percussion, and some utility stuff here. We have our bass guitar, 2 channels of electric, 2 channels of electric, 2 more channels of keys, and some ambience mics. Our tracks, horns, vocals. Then we have our front of house talkback mic, MC mics, oscillators, aux inputs, and then our bus effects masters. We then have our buses for our monitors, and then our DCAs and our main faders. Probably the last thing you would do is put at least your band all on one mute group. This is just a bit of a tedious process, so I'm going to save you the headache of having to watch me do this whole thing. I mentioned towards the start of the video about being able to link sockets to channel strips in a more kind of sneaky way without having to reassign or unassign anything. First way would be, say the guitarist shows up and he's only running mono. All you have to do is have him plug into one of the sockets. You use that fader and you mute the other one. Simple enough, don't have to unassign or reassign anything. Say he is running stereo and you want to just rock both faders, kind of old school. So you would say make your processing adjustments, and then you would go to the copy section, just copy it to the other fader, and then now you have the same processing on both sets of faders. Or say, for example, you did want to have it linked at the socket. You can do that in the channel strip. Again, we built the sockets into the fader space, so it's really easy. All you have to do is go to the actual channel strip itself, link the socket there, and then just mute the other fader. So you'll have 2 channels with the same socket information, but you just only use one of them, mute the other one. So that is an overview of kind of how I would set up a Wing console. This is a bit more than I would realistically want to do behind a Wing, but the point is the Wing can do it. As long as you're clever about kind of how you lay the console out, it can be a really smooth experience. So I hope you enjoyed watching. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Thanks for watching.